This has been the hardest 12 to 15, 18 months of my entire life. This was harder than any selection that I went through. This has been harder than anything.
Welcome to Mindset Lesson from the Field. I'm Gina Casasso, the author of the upcoming memoir, Training with the SEAL. Today, we are doing an in-person guest. If you guys are not watching and just listening, and I'm really, really excited about this one, we got retired 20-year Special Forces, 18 Bravo, Weapons Sergeant for, I said 20 years. 20 years. He's been married, right? 5 kids, the host of the podcast called Rooted in Life and Business, where he talks to people about living a life of purpose. We are definitely going to dive deep into that this episode, which I'm excited about. He's currently getting his master's in theology. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really excited to introduce you to Brandon Lankford. Brandon, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'm really excited. What are the odds you get to come down here? Fun.
It was very fortuitous that we're trying to set this up, and I'm like, wait, you're in Myrtle Beach. I'm coming to Myrtle Beach in a couple of days.
It's perfect.
Exactly.
It's great. And I love how it's so organic when it's like in person and you're like not in front of the screen. And
right.
So thanks so much for doing this on your vacation.
Hey, I got 5 kids, so this is actually a pleasure. They woke me up at 6 o'clock this morning. Can you open my pouch? Can you open my juice? So it's like, oh, we got to leave, get back in a few hours. Told them I'd be back on Sundays.
This is hilarious. I definitely want to get into a little bit of what it's like raising kids with a lot of purpose. If that's what you're teaching to adults, I'm assuming you're going to be talking to your kids about that and figuring out their purpose and stuff. And I would love to dive into that a little bit later into the show on how parents can get their kids to find and figure out a kid's purpose. And I know that might change over time. I mean, I feel like my purpose as an adult has changed frequently. However, I feel like it's always tied down rooted into like one theme of it all. But I would love to explore that further. But before we start, let's talk a little bit about you and your life and how you even went this route. Like, why Green Beret? And did you want to go Green Beret? Did you want to go into the military?
I wanted to be a cop when I was a kid.
Okay.
So I was the 7-year-old that was running around my backyard pretending to be Wyatt Earp, arresting bad guys. That was always my dream. And then didn't get to be a cop. Tried out for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. They said, hey, you're perfect, just not right now. And so I said, okay, well, then I'll join the military. And then in my mind, in the same like daydreaming of I'm going to be a police officer. And I was also thinking about being the Army Ranger. So I was like, I'll just do that. I'll be a sniper Army Ranger. And joined after 9/11, just like so many other people did. Just started that journey. So came in as a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout. Did that for a few years. Actually got to go to sniper school as a Cav Scout. So I was one of the few in my unit that was able to do that. And then did a couple trips to Iraq. As soon as I got back after my first deployment, they're like, all right, now we're moving the entire cavalry unit. We're going to go down to Texas. And I was like, I do not want to go to Texas. So I called my wife and I said, hey, HR is here. They said I can go just about anywhere. She's like, well, if you're going to go Special Forces, let's go to Bragg. He sat down and said, hey, I want to go to Fort Bragg. They're like, you got it. Airborne en route, Fort Bragg. I was like, really? They're like, yeah. I was like, I want Hawaii instead. He goes, no, you're going to Bragg. I was like, well, it was worth a shot. So I got to Bragg, did 18 months with the 82nd. When I was back in Iraq for my second trip, they came to me and they're like, Lankford, I know that name. Yeah, you're on orders to Fort Polk in Louisiana. I called my wife, said, we're going to Louisiana. She said, no, you're not. You're going to selection. And I said, okay. So as soon as I got back from a 8-month deployment, jumped right back into selection, SFAS, in November of 2007. The rest is, I guess, is history. I went right through as an 18 Bravo, graduated in 2009, and then spent the next 15, 16 years, however long it was. My memory's shot at this point. But as a Green Beret, and out of 3rd Special Forces Group, and then retired out of 1st Special Forces Command.
Did you have any struggles along the way? Were you questioning it all?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. One of my biggest takeaways when I was going through selection was obviously you have no idea what you're going to expect. You don't know any of the events. You can watch all the TV shows that you want to watch about what selection is, but until you're actually going through it, getting kicked in the mouth. Like, you have no idea what you're going to expect. My recruiter comes to me and he goes, at some point over the next 3 weeks, you're going to want to quit. Just wait until you get done with the event, get back. And then if you still want to quit, then you can do it. So as you're going through selection, you have all these different events. You got a whiteboard that says, hey, be at this location at this time, your rucksack needs to weigh this much weight.
Heard about that.
Yeah,
And it has to weigh a certain weight. And if like you go a little bit, you're like done.
Yeah, they weigh it. And it's like, hey, if it has to be 55 pounds, it's 55 pounds dry. If you come back and you've thrown rocks out, they're like, hey, you're done. It's minimal guidance. It's, hey, we're just going to see if this person has the autonomy and the intelligence and the physical capabilities to do this job.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Before you said something that sparked something. You said minimal guidance, right?
Yes.
Does that make you question a little bit more? I feel like for myself, as I'm running a business, I have nobody to. I mean, I do have like a mentor but it's like. Still, like, he doesn't tell you exactly. I'm like, why can't there just be like a guide, like raising children, right? There's no guide, right? You don't know what you're doing and you get advice from other people, but you're essentially throwing it and you're just thinking about everything, right? So how did you like combat that and that questioning?
You just do the best you can. And then you have to trust your gut that you've made the right decision. And then if you've made the wrong decision, you either own that or you just stick with what's true and what you know to be true. And you're not always going to be right. You're not always going to be perfect. But if you just have the confidence in yourself, that's what makes you a resilient leader and a resilient special forces operator. To fast track a little bit, going through parts of the other course, they said, all right, hey, you have 15 minutes to make this decision. And I think it was something like, I had like 6 casualties and I had to figure out a way to medevac them out of a situation. And then at the end, they're like, all right, time. Like, how'd you do it? What'd you do? Well, I picked 2 of my strongest leaders and I said, hey, what would you do? What would you do? I took both of their recommendations. I made a decision and that's what we went with. I knew I had minimal time. The enemy's coming in and we executed. He's like, well, it wasn't successful. It's like, okay. It's like, so would you do anything different? I was like, well, hindsight, yeah. But in the moment, I only had 15 minutes to make a decision. And you can either sit there and become paralysis by analysis and do absolutely nothing because you're afraid of making a decision. Or you can just say, hey, I've got 15 minutes. I'm going to do the best that I can. You get in, you do what you got to do, and you get out and you hope and you pray that you're successful. And I think that's, I don't know for certain what they're looking for. It's very close hold, but I think that's a lot of what they're looking for. Fast forward, 15 years after that, I'm working at a selection committee for a completely different organization. And everything that we were looking for was all mental. It was, does the individual have the capability to do this job? And should they be doing this job? Like, was it important that they could do the PT test and pass it with a 300? 100%. Like, we want to make sure you're still physically fit, but are you mentally fit too? Can you come in and we ask something of you or require something of you with little autonomy from us giving you all this direction? Can you just go, I'm going to make the best decision that I can and execute, or do you become paralyzed with fear? And we don't want the guys that are going to be paralyzed with that fear.
So how do you train your mind in terms of, and when I speak about this, I speak from what Gino would be doing. Yes, you got to execute, you got to make a choice. It's either going to be successful or not, right? For myself, it's not successful. And then I am really dwelling on that in terms of, yes, you want to analyze like, what could have I have done better? Where could have I improved? But not beat yourself up in that fact. And there's lives on the line. I mean, that is, that weighs heavy. It's like when I worked in the film business, pressure was on. It's like, nobody's dying, right? Like nobody's shooting at me. But it's real. That's a serious thing. People are dying. People are shooting at you. Like, how do you or maybe you did it, I don't know, like move on? Was there a situation that haunted you? And how do you move on from that if you ever move on from that?
Situations that haunted me. How much time do you have? We, there's lots of those. And it's those moments where you look back and you replay the moment in your life over and over again, because it's like, could I have done something different? Had I made a different decision, would this person still be alive? Had I done this, what would have happened? So my first trip to Iraq, I was with 3rd Armored Cav. We were attached and supporting Special Forces, and we were going out to do a hit. And we had a target building that we were going to go. Special Forces set up the perimeter. We were going in. We were all in like our armored vehicles and just a bunch of young kids. We didn't know any better. I knew where I was supposed to go. I was supposed to go down this road. It was a car lot is what it was. And I knew that's where I was supposed to be. Well, the vehicle that I was in dropped us off at the wrong location. So then I find myself in the stack of guys that was going in to clear the building. And I just remember hearing a voice, this isn't where you're supposed to be. This isn't where you're supposed to be. And I'm just like running everything through my brain going, okay, I jumped in the stack because if I go where I'm supposed to go, I'm going to have to run down this road all by myself. But if I don't run down the road, then the little group that I'm supposed to be with isn't going to know where I'm at. And then is that going to cause confusion? So I'm like, all right, forget this. I need to get out of the stack. I need to go where I'm supposed to go. And I just remember I'm running down this, I don't even remember how far it was. It was so long ago, but I remember running down this road and there was just an explosion behind me. I remember gravel kind of like falling around me. And then I go into the car lot where I was supposed to be. And there's like 2 or 3 SF guys in there. And then the rest of the team that I was supposed to be with. Fast forward, 6 hours, get into a huge gunfight. The enemy was inside of the school. They were heavily defended. They were ready for us to go in there. The stack that had gone in, that I was standing in, that I was told to get out of, my inner voice told me to get out of, we ended up taking a casualty from that. And then when he was being medevaced out, the medevac vehicle hit an IED and blew up, flipped over, and killed another guy and injured the commander of that vehicle. And so I often think back to the 2 guys that died, Bradfield and Woods, and I go, if I would have stayed in that stack, would I have been the one that got shot in the throat? If I would have gone into that building, would I have been in the vehicle that got blown up? And, I still replay over and over in my mind, like going out in the vehicle that morning, and Woods was driving the vehicle, the medevac vehicle that got blown up and flipped over that killed him. And it was like 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. It was dark. He almost ran into the back of the vehicle. And I just remember laughing at him because we were this close. And I was just like, I'm going to have to say something to him when I get back, and never got to talk to him again.
Oh.
And so it's like, gosh, now that's probably 16, 17 years ago. And it's like, I still think about that moment. You can either choose to live, like you should choose to live in that moment at times, to celebrate their life, to celebrate the individual. But you also have to go, I can't let that one moment define who I am. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to sit in it for a moment. I'm going to take the lessons learned. I'm going to put it in my pocket, and I'm going to continue on. And I'm going to live the best life I can.
Wow. That great advice. Fantastic story. I mean, terrible that, that happened, but, that is one of those, like, we all go through, I've had losses in my life that were traumatic and surprising and things like that. And you think about that last day with that person, or, you're in a situation, it's like, oh my God, that could have been me. Think about that. But, living, it's very important to think about, like you said, like to celebrate that person or to appreciate where you are now. It's like, I'm really big into like appreciating the present moment. I think that we take it so much for granted, and we always are thinking about the future or dwelling on the past, and we're never really fully here. And, it's like we forget that it could all be over in an instant, and I feel like you really know that because you've really experienced that, where sometimes like you have children. I'm sure that's the last thing that's on their mind, right? It's like, it's just like you think it's better. Remember when I was driving for the first time, you're like invincible. You're not, but you think you are, So living, how do you like, I'm curious about this. Like, how would you instill like the present moment and that every life matters and it takes for, I mean, like we shouldn't take our moment for granted. Like every life could go to a child. And yet, because that got to be scary as a parent, as your kid's like driving. And, when you probably remember you're that age, you're invincible. Like, I mean, so how do you instill that into a child while also not bringing in fear?
As soon as you figure that out, let me know. Because I have a 17 and a 19-year-old that I would love to impart that wisdom onto.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm a person of faith. So a lot of the decisions I make and the way that I go about raising my kids all comes back to my relationship with God. And so I use that as an example to impart that onto my children. Now, by no means, like I don't know where this conversation is going to go, and I don't know, if my kids will listen to this and agree with anything that I have to say. But like all I do is I try my best to teach them just to do the best that they can. But it's so hard because it's like I don't have the best relationship with my kids. Like my oldest two, my 17 and 19-year-old, I was gone for the first 8 years of their life. Like I was an absentee parent. It would have been better off that me and my wife were not better off, but it would have been the equivalent of if we were divorced and I saw them maybe once a month or during the summer. So like I don't have a relationship. So trying to impart wisdom on my 17-year-old is like a stepfather coming in at 17 years old trying to give this new kid wisdom. It's like he doesn't want to listen to me. He doesn't care what I have to say. And so it's really hard. Compare that to my relationship with my 8-year-old, my 5-year-old, and my almost 4-year-old. What I'm able to do now is go, this worked and this did not work for my oldest two. So I'm going to choose what worked with my younger 3. That just comes from like hard lessons learned. There's no easy button to like teach your children how to be like, how to value life and how to appreciate the moment, because one, they're not going to get it. And then 2, like their brains just aren't even developed enough to fully understand that. All you can do is, I guess, demonstrate love and compassion and demonstrate your values to your children and hope that they pick that up. So when they do find themselves behind the wheel, maybe they'll think a little bit more and realize that they're not invincible and make better decisions. And it's like I always tell my son, don't be like me, be better than me, because I know what I screwed up. And it's like, I've not even told him all the stories of stuff that I've done to screw up before, but it's like, dear God, please don't let him be like me. Just be better than me. I don't know how to teach your kids to value that life other than just instilling your values in them. And for me, my values come from my relationship with God. So.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
This podcast episode is brought to you by Thrivers Coffee. Podcast guest Nick McKinley's company, Deliver Fund, brings you guys Thrivers Coffee. It is ethically sourced, it's organic, and it supports traffic survivors. That is right. Thrivers Coffee is all about empowering us to making a difference in the fight to end human trafficking. That's why 100% of the proceeds go directly towards their goal of bringing freedom to victims of human trafficking. So if you guys love coffee that is organic, ethically sourced, and tastes absolutely delicious, and want to help to end the fight of human trafficking, check out Nick McKinley's company, Thrivers Coffee.
Did you ever question, like, when you were in the military and working your way up, and this now became a full-blown career for you and everything that you were doing, did you ever question, like, is this right for me? Because I do have a family, I do have kids, and yet there is a huge sacrifice that we just don't understand, as we are not a military family. Like anyone that's listening, you don't understand the sacrifices that a family makes to protect and serve us, which we're extremely grateful for. I am extremely grateful for. So how do you, I guess, going to like the living life of purpose, it's like, how do you like affirm that this is right? Or maybe it wasn't, but I mean, you did 20 years and you've kept on going. So how do you, especially like if somebody is making a sacrifice that's listening, it's like, and it doesn't just have to be military. It could be like, I'm building a business and I'm doing this for myself. And I mean, to feed my family. And it's like, I just unfortunately can't make it home for dinner right now, so how did you like get through that to do your career, provide for your family, and what advice do you have for somebody that's kind of feels the same way?
Yeah. So at year 10, I had the choice. I made the E7 list, and you couldn't pen 7 if you were over 10 years without being indefinite or something along those lines. It had something to do with retention and your rank. I'm probably a terrible soldier because I don't know all the what the rules were, but I just know that in order for me to take the rank of E7, that I had to re-enlist to meet the time requirement. But due to my re-enlistment schedule, it was going to have to be indefinite. I couldn't just do another 4 years. And I called my wife. I said, well, I can either pen 7 in a month or I can get out. And she has epilepsy and she needed the medicine. And she's like, well, we can't afford my medicine without insurance. So you're staying in. So I stayed in there another 10 years, not necessarily because I wanted to, but because I was told to, which is a theme within my marriage. And I think every man's a marriage, just they oftentimes will just do whatever their wife tells them to. And so that's what I did, re-enlisted, went in deaf. And that's why I did my 20 and got out right at 20. Enjoyed my time, enjoyed all my experiences. Definitely think that's where I needed to be in the moment. Year 15. Okay, so we're at 15 years of the Army telling me where I'll go to school, what unit I'm going to be a part of, where I'm going to be stationed, what deployments I'm going on, dictating my life. It was year 15, so this was 2018. And I was supposed to do a 6-month rotation. And there were some issues with my replacements because I told them, hey, Libya is trying to actually be a legit government now, regardless of what we think. And it's no more flying in on, just a gray tail aircraft and getting off. And then you're in Libya. It's like they actually want you to go through their customs. You need to apply for a visa. Well, they didn't do that. And so my replacements got rejected entry into Libyan airspace. And so here I am calling back to Germany like, hey, when are my replacements going to be here? I have all these plans. My rotation's coming to an end. They're just like, yeah, we don't know. I never made 8. And it's probably because I run my mouth. I don't know honestly, I don't know what the reason is. There's a lot of reasons I can probably pinpoint, but one of them is that I run my mouth. And I just remember talking to my boss in Germany. I'm like, oh, so you have no clue when I'm leaving? He's like, no, man, I'm sorry. Like, okay. It's like, hey, when are you leaving, by the way? He goes, oh, next Saturday. Why? Did you need something? I said, no, I just want to know what it feels like to be able to know that you're going to go home. And he goes, oh, it's going to be like that. I said, yeah, it's just like that. So I was really disgruntled. I felt like I was just being used. I'm just another number. I'm just another person. Like I didn't feel valued in my job anymore. So I called my wife up and I said, I'm done. I'm absolutely done. She's like, what do you mean? I said, I am tired of putting my career in front of my family. For 15 years, I have made every decision for my career at the expense of my family, and I've gotten nowhere. I'm done. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm putting my family and putting you guys before my career for the next 5 years. And I just heard silence and then, thank you. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, I have been waiting so long for you to say that. I'm like, well, then why didn't you say something? She goes, because I didn't want to be what was standing in your way. And it broke my heart and crushed me because it's like, that's when I realized everything that I did was for me. It was all about what school can I go to? What deployment can I get on? What is going to value me? And in the process of pursuing myself, I was sacrificing my family at the altar of Brandon. And I had nothing to show for it. Here I am. I'm retired now. I've been retired for 15 months. I'm a student. My family is still here. They're still by my side. But everything that I thought I was sacrificing for is gone. It's still there. But like my legacy within Special Forces, there's no legacy. Call Third Group and ask who Brandon Lankford is. You might catch a few guys that were on a team with me years and years ago. And I hope they have positive things to say about me. But like my legacy is with my kids and what they carry on and what I instill in them, not what vanity I was chasing on the shores of Tripoli in 2018, which was a good time. But that doesn't last forever.
So let's go into life of purpose.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you shifting career. I mean, you're done with that career, right? You're going into a new role, right? Wasn't present for a while. That has to be hard to then be present and be in this dynamic. And I just know for myself, like as a teen, like why am I, you were in here, like where, like, well, why am I listening to you now? And that got to be a really hard, adjustment. And then it's like, I just lost my whole entire identity, my whole entire career. How do you find purpose then for this new, because this, I'm assuming, couldn't have been easy.
This has been the hardest 12 to 15, 18 months of my entire life. This was harder than any selection that I went through. This has been harder than anything for me personally, because when I took off that Green Beret and retired, that was it. I took that. It's still sitting on my bookshelf right now. That was my entire identity. It's, hey, I'm Brandon Lankford. I'm 18 Bravo Weapons Sergeant with 3rd Special Forces Group Green Beret. That's how I introduced myself. Not to everybody. That's a little arrogant. But when people would say, what do you do? Well, I'm Special Forces. Oh my gosh, you're Special Forces. Instantly, like, feed my ego. That becomes so many people's identity. And for 20 years, like every part of my life was dictated. It was just instilled in me going through selection, Q course and everything. And like, this is who you are. You're a Green Beret. And then you realize how special you are in regards to how people treat you. You realize how special you are in regards to you get treated differently. You literally wear a tab on your shoulder that says that you are special. And so you buy into that. And it's like, not that you're better than people, but it's like when you start looking at the total population of like who actually goes into the military. I think I heard a statistic one time, and don't quote me on this. Don't use me for your footnotes by any means. But like 1% of like the entire population of America joins the military. And then within that, it's 1% that goes Special Forces and actually makes it. So I walk around going, I'm 1% of the 1%. That's a very arrogant way to look at it. But it's like you really start to buy into this, like we are special. Because you meet so many people, it's like, I was going to join the military, but I would have punched my drill sergeant in the face. It's like, okay, buddy. And then the same thing, you get done with selection and, I go back to the 82nd, I pass selection, I'm waiting to go to the Q course, and I've got 5 different people who are treating me like garbage. All first sergeants and E8s going, well, I went to selection, I didn't make it, so screw you. And it's like, so then you realize like, well, I'm a little bit better than you, aren't I? But anyways, that's the wrong way to think about life. But I did. So now fast forward, you're retired. You put your beret on the counter. Your kids don't care that you were Special Forces. They just know their dad wasn't home. Wife doesn't care that you're Special Forces. You were Special Forces. She just knows of how many anniversaries you missed, how many birthdays you missed. Watching my kid learn to walk through FaceTime or Skype. Like that was my experience. So this has been the hardest 15 months of my life. And the way that I have found my way through it really was just not to beat the drum, but like just refining my faith, reestablishing and rebuilding my relationship with Christ. And I think through that, he has given me an opportunity. I don't know if I'm the norm or if I'm the exception, but like I got out and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a retired Green Beret. I automatically command $120,000 salary. I'm going to have people beating down my doors, wanting me to come work for them in this capacity or that capacity. And I did get out. I got an internship, was working for a fantastic company, and then realized it was causing issues at home because I was falling right back into the same repetitive behaviors that I was when I was in the military. I realized I was already violating the unspoken, unmet promises that I made my wife. Hey, I'm retired. She's going, finally, I get my husband back. And I'm like, I'm leaving. It's 4th of July. I'm going to work. And I'm like, nope, I need to quit. I'm going to focus on my family. And then everything dried up. I went from running a course as a green suiter to being just a role player. And it was like, it's not feeding my ego. What do you mean you just want me to be a role player? Like I ran this course 6 months ago. If anybody's going to fact check me, I didn't actually run the course, but I was an integral part in the course. Yeah. But it's like, here's my ego again. Like, look, they made you a role player. You're so much better than this. Oh, you're working for this company. They're only paying you half of what you're actually worth. Put in resume for this, resume for that. Hey, you're more than qualified. Unfortunately, we're not hiring right now. Hey, you're more qualified than every instructor that we have right now, but we're not hiring. Hey, you would be perfect for this position. We get the contract a year from now. And it was just like gut punch after gut punch after gut punch of 20 years of never failing anything. Again, my ego, I was pretty much a first time go at everything I tried within my military career. And there was very few times that I felt like I failed. And now here it is for 12, 15 months, failing at everything, crushing my soul on a daily basis. All my friends, they're gone. Why? Because they're still in the military. They're retired. They've moved away. My job, gone. I'm no longer a Green Beret. I was a Green Beret. I have nothing. What do I have to look forward to? Why even get up in the morning? What am I doing with my life? I have nothing. No, I have a family of 6 that still relies on me, but I couldn't see that. It was because I was putting my self-value into the things that I thought were important, not the things that we're called to see as valuable and important. Like I was my friends, if I'm a good teammate, if I'm a good 18 Bravo, if I'm a good instructor, if I'm a good whatever, that's my value. No, if I'm a good father, if I'm a good husband, if I'm raising good children to be good humans, like that's my purpose. What has God called us to be? That's our purpose. And when you're pursuing that, I think other doors open and other opportunities open that you see even more valuable, because I was looking at the dollar sign. I was looking at what my title was going to be. And all of that stuff can be taken just as quickly as it can be received, but no one can take my faith. And so I've got that forever. So that's my purpose now, is to see every opportunity as a God-given gift. And just the things that he's given me, I'm just going to do the best I can to be stewards of those until they're 19 years old and living in college and living their best life.
That was fantastic. Oh my God. I really love that. So my question then is, how do you realize this, right? Because I mean, this is a lot of self-realization. Like this is like, I was talking about this on another podcast, and I was talking about like how we don't really observe ourselves much. And it's really hard to change when we don't see that within ourselves, right? And you saw that within you, right? And how do you, at what point did you recognize this? And then at what point do you move to figuring out this new purpose, right? Because rejection is, like I teach this to parents. It's funny when you're not a parent, you teach things to parents. But yes, I do this. I do this to teachers too. And I said, you need to fail the kids. The kids need to experience failure, because in life they're gonna think, this is why I think participation trophies are like the worst things ever. And I was talking to a bunch of teachers, and they said, well, how do we help the kids that are doing so well, and that are A students and they're acing everything? And I go, you fail them. You make an absolutely impossible test that they cannot pass, and you have them experience failure. And then you sit down with them and you go over that test, and then you have them take it again. And whether they get one question right or all questions right, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that they've improved, right? At some level, in some capacity. But they have to experience failure. And some kids just don't. They have, like you mentioned, like I went first, like that's amazing. That's very impressive. And I think that is something to celebrate. I always tell people, like, when you do something, like I'm not a fan of when a kid's like, oh my God, I did amazing, I hit that home run. And parents are like, let's bring it down, right? It's like, no, raise it up. Like, this is amazing. Let's congratulate that, right? But also, that kid also experienced the lows in terms of like not scoring that game-winning goal, and then they're crushed and things like that. It's like, yeah, let's feel that too, right? Let's experience those highs and those lows, and let's congratulate them. So for you, like as an adult experiencing this, and not only that, but the pressure of a man in society with raising and protecting family, right? Now that's even more because it's like, oh my God, it's not just me, right? In my life, it's like if I fail, it's just me. Okay. But with you, it's like it's also like 6 other people that I'm taking care of that are gonna feel this too if I can't get somewhere. So how do you move with those feelings to live with a positive and a smile and because again your kids can feel that they can feel when you're off, when you're not off and all that stuff, and you got to be, as you say, you want to be at your best, right, for a family. So how do you do that?
Yes. So the first time I was ever exposed to uh, self-awareness was I was going through an assessment and selection for a course, and I had to sit down with the psych, and she goes, "What are your strengths?" And every job offer or job interview has these, tell me your strengths and your weaknesses. Like, and so I was prepared. I was like, oh yeah, okay, my strengths. My teammates would say I'm fire and forget, that I'm dependable, I'm a good teammate. I forget whatever else I said, but I had my list ready to go. Here's all my strengths. I'm really good at Microsoft PowerPoint. Whatever the case may be, it's like, I'm really good at this. And then she goes, okay, she didn't ask me what my weaknesses were. She said, what would your teammates say negatively about you? Well, nothing. They don't say anything negative about me. She goes, okay, so when you fail, I was like, I don't fail. No. When you do something wrong and I don't do anything wrong. I do exactly what my team asked me to do. I thought, this is good. My feedback said, no self-awareness. And that was the moment I was like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be self-aware. And I just looked at it as like, no, my teammates tell me I do good. They don't tell me when I do anything wrong. Therefore, I'm not doing anything wrong. Now, I probably took my self-awareness to the opposite extreme of like being hyper aware.
Oh my God, that's me.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
But that was my first exposure. And then, so at that point forward, it was just like, wow, Gina just said something really good to me. But what did she really mean by that? Was there an undertone to it? You become self-critical. And
yes. Oh, yeah. I get it. Yeah.
the way that I found to combat that, because I have noticed that when I am in my darkest moments in my household and in my head, my kids can see that. My 4-year-old, almost 4-year-old, he can see that. And he feeds off that. My 5-year-old daughter, my princess, I don't care. She can hear this podcast. She's a little princess. She can sense it. My 8-year-old can sense it. And they start responding and acting according to how I think I'm hiding it. I'm not hiding anything. It's all over my face. It's in my body language. It's how I talk to my wife. It's how I talk to my kids. It's how I carry myself. I found myself within the last few months at the lowest low that I could have imagined. And it was at that point of, God, kill me. God, I'm ready to die. I can't do this anymore. I have nothing. If you believe in like God's providence and how everything lines up and happens for a reason. Like I was months ago, probably 4 months ago, my wife bought me tickets to go see Jordan Peterson. Big pain. Had no clue what he was going to talk about. Yeah. I just knew I was going to see Jordan Peterson. In fact, as we're standing in line in Durham, North Carolina to see him, I'm like, what is he even talking about? I didn't care. I just wanted to see him. I'm reading a book leading up to it by Craig Groeschel called Winning the War in Your Mind.
Okay.
Where it's all about like, hey, I'm having negative thoughts. I'm struggling in life. I'm struggling with my purpose. I'm just struggling. And that was me. I'm struggling. So I'm listening to this book. And in the book, he's talking about Elijah from the Old Testament prophet. We go see Jordan Peterson. And he comes out on stage and he goes, tonight, I'm going to be talking about Elijah. And I just grabbed my wife and I looked at her and I went, oh my gosh. I was like, this is two things. Craig Groeschel just talked about Elijah in his book that I read today. Jordan Peterson is talking about it tonight. This has got to mean something. So I go back and the next morning I wake up and I'm reading the Bible and I'm like, I'm going to read about Elijah. I've read about Elijah before. I've heard the stories. I grew up in church, know all about it. Elijah was at his lowest. He was being chased by Queen Jezebel, wanted to kill him just to make an example out of him. Was at his lowest low, was in the wilderness, was all alone, had lost everything, and goes, God, please just kill me. And God says, you know what, Elijah, I'm going to pass by you. Walk out of your cave that you're hiding in, walk out onto the mountainside, and I'm going to show myself to you. I'm going to pass by you. There was a hurricane, strong wind. God wasn't in it. There was a earthquake. God wasn't in it. There was a fire. God wasn't in it. There was a small breeze that came by, and it was in that small breeze was the whisper of God. What I took from that was in our lowest, when we hit rock bottom, when we're in our weakest moments, and we're looking for all this other stuff, God, show me your glory. It's not in all the lights and sound and thunderous earthquakes and, whatever of our world, but it's in the whisper. And I heard a whisper, and it was, you are not what you call yourself. You are not what you call yourself, whether that's liar, cheater, good person, bad person, evil person. You are who I say you are. And I call you saved, and I call you forgiving. And it's like, that's what we have to remember, is that when we're in our low, we are who God says we are, and we're children of God. And so that is what pulled me out of, that's what I need to remember. I need to remember that we're all children of God. So that's going to help me respond to other people better, because it's like, I'm not going to treat you like garbage if I remember that you're a child of God. I'm not going to yell at my child when he does something stupid that's just being a kid. Sometimes he needs to be yelled at, but maybe I take a second and I go, you're my child, but you're also a child of God. I need to remember that, not to get political, whether it's the immigrants, the Democrats, the Republicans, the independents, the whomever. We spout out all these things that we think of what these people are. But if we remember, but they're also children of God, would we treat everybody a little bit differently? And if I just remember that I'm a child of God and what's my purpose as a child of God, and if I spend my time looking and directing my aim at being a better person and being good and spending time in the Bible and figuring out what I'm supposed to do, then that'll pull me out of that despair. That'll pull me out of that depth of self-loathing and self-hatred and beating myself up for how you're a terrible father, Brandon. Look, you missed the first 8 years of Ethan's life. He resents you now. Look how terrible you are. I can either listen to those lies and get into a funk and sit around my house and talk about how terrible I am. And when my son comes in and says, hey, Dad, I made the track team, I can go, yeah, but, and feel sorry for myself. Or I can go, man, that is awesome. You're a pole vaulter. Okay, we'll figure this out. But it's like, if I just remember my kids are my children and the child of God and everyone else is a child of God, and I act accordingly, that's going to pull me out. And there's been lots of studies that have shown, and I can't quote these.
Yeah.
Again, I read it in Craig Groeschel's book, so go buy his book, Winning the War in Your Mind, and he has it all footnoted. He talks about there have been studies that show when you do praise and worship, when you read the Bible, when you pray, they've looked at the brain waves and shown that you could actually pull yourself out of these funks. This is not a Tom Cruise jumping on the couch talking about how great Scientology is. I was on anxiety medicine for a very long time. I got off of it because I got tired of having medicine affecting my brain. I still struggle with anxiety today. Just coming off the medicine and listening to praise and worship doesn't fix everything, but it gives me a really good starting point.
So then how do you, as you pull yourself out of this, right? And live in faith, right? And which I'm going to say is feeling good. Okay. To understand. Great. So how do you then figure out the new purpose? It's like, okay, I'm now a student. So now what is your new path that you're then working towards?
I don't know what to do with my hands right now. This is my Ricky Bobby face. It is still a struggle for me daily to not jump on LinkedIn and see my friends getting this high praise from, hey, look at the new position that so-and-so is starting at such and such company. He's going to be our VP of whatever. And it's like, me and that guy did the exact same job. How does he get a 6-figure job and I can't get anything? It's learning to be content. It's learning to recognize in the moment, be grateful for what God has given you. And so what I'm looking at specifically in my life right now, I missed so many birthdays, anniversaries, first walks, first everything. I can choose to look at this and say, God, why are you punishing me? Why do you hate me? Why do you not want me to have a job? Why do you not want me to do this? Or do I reframe the thought in my mind and go, God, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to spend all of this time with my kids. I don't have a job that I have to go to. I'm 100% disabled, 20-year retired. So I get a check from the government every month, hopefully. At my point in my life right now, I am afforded the opportunity that I do not have to work. I know that is a blessing and not everybody has that capability, but this is what God has given me in this moment in my life to make up for lost time with my kids and to not make the same mistakes because I want nothing more than to be offered 6 figures to
go home, and I'm not like being a parent rewarding, but that there's an itch there that I want it. That yes, and I understand that, and that's where I'm wondering, like, how do we, just be present and enjoy family time. That itch of that,
it does not go away.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Not for people that are just, you just had this. I think all of us, in a way, we have that. We just don't feed it. But for you, you fed it your whole entire life, and it just can't just, it's like a mosquito. But
how do you shut off? How do you shut off a part of your brain that for 20 years drove all of your success?
Right. Yeah.
To then retire and just go, I am now going to ignore everything and every part of me that was successful.
Right.
I would argue, what does success look like for you?
Right.
Success for me for 20 years was, what rank do I have on my chest? What tab is on my left sleeve? When I go to what country, what accolades am I getting? What ribbons do I now have on my chest from this? What are my friends saying about me? And now I'm reframing the thought of like, okay, that's what success looked like for me, but that's not what successful is. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm raising 5 wonderful human beings. That's success. I've been married for 20 years. Probably shouldn't have been. She could have left me at any point in time, and I don't know if I'm going to have a ride home after this. But success is that I'm still married to my middle school sweetheart. You have to reframe what opportunity you have right in front of you and just look at the positivity of it. And you can choose to look at the negative. I don't have a 6-figure job. I don't have a job. I don't have this. I don't have that. Or you can say, okay, God, what am I supposed to be learning right now? What opportunity do I have right now? 6 months ago, me and my wife, we bought 20 acres of land. I got 5 chickens. I got a garden. I got a tractor. I got a 4-wheeler.
That keeps you busy.
I got guns. It keeps me busy. I can go out and do whatever I want to do on a daily basis. If I want to wake up and walk out my backyard butt naked and shoot guns and drink coffee, I can do that. And maybe I just need to learn to be grateful for what I have in this moment before I'm carried into the next moment of my life, because I'm going to finish up my degree in about 12 months. And then I don't know what's going to happen after that. But what if it's just as busy as it was when I was sitting in Libya or sitting in Afghanistan or Kyrgyzstan or wherever I was? If my next moment is that busy, I'm going to be praying that I had a moment like this to just enjoy the quietness, the whisper, and just the solitary moments that I have to spend with my kids.
So then what do you have for us listeners in terms of building that mental fitness, that resilience for if they're hitting their low point, because we all hit a low point, right? We all have a low, and I don't think you could ever really prepare for what's gonna come and what's gonna hit you. However, what can we do on a daily that you would say helps build that shield?
It goes back to training, and you can apply this to any aspect of life. Like we always would say, train as you fight. Like, you are training for that worst case scenario. Like, I went through a lot of schools where I would get arrested by the cops and like taken and detained. And they're like, okay, where were you on such and such night? We're accusing you of murder. And it's like, this is so dumb. This is so stupid. Taken through customs and like all these different exercises that I'm like, this is so unrealistic. Like this never happens, until I find myself sitting in Tripoli being surrounded by militia and like 6 gun trucks. And they're like, what are you Americans doing in our country? There are no Americans here. And they're like, we're taking you to the prison. And we're like, no, 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 no. We're here on behalf of like our country and your country. And they're like, no, we're the militia that controls this. We're taking you in. We kept trying to like tell them like, no, like here, talk to this person on the phone. Here, talk to this person. They'll explain why we're here. They didn't want to hear it. There was a moment I found myself, I literally laughed out loud, sitting in a car surrounded by 4, 5, 6 gun trucks and all masked men threatening to take me to prison. And I started laughing. I went, oh my gosh, this is just like that training event that we did in such and such. And then I literally, like, I had to shake my head like, no, but this is real. Like, these are real bullets. And like, this isn't going to be the guy that I see at the bar later or anything like that. Like, these are real militia guys that don't know why I'm in their country that are doing this. So like, okay, so all I can do now is fall back on my training. So now I'm falling back on my SEER training. Now I'm falling back on like my human training of like how to communicate and like how to manipulate and how to influence. And I'm sitting here and me and the guy that I was with, I'm like, what do we do, dude? And he's like, I don't know, but if we go anywhere but north, we're going to hightail it out of here. So just be prepared to shoot. We kept talking about all of our different contingencies. And it's like, okay, well, we tried talking to him. That didn't work. I've got $10,000 in cash. We could try that. And if that doesn't work, then I've got an MP5 underneath the seat. And then we got M4s in the back. We can shoot our way out of here. We had our contingencies. Fortunately, we got in touch with the right person, the right individual, made the right phone call. They pulled over, they apologized profusely, and then they escorted us out of the city. So many times I prepared for that moment by going through different types of training and just repetitive behavior. You know, if it's shooting, it's like, we're going to the range and we're going to start at 6 feet, shooting 6-inch circles. And then we're going to back up. And then we're trying to hone our skills. So that way, when the poop hits the fan, I'm not thinking about, oh my gosh, what do? I know what to do. It's a long-winded way of saying what I do now is I train for how I fight. I wake up every morning. I pray. I read the Bible. Today may be a great day. Today's a fantastic day so far. I'm sitting here with you having a wonderful conversation. I started my morning in prayer and reading my Bible. I was training for how I may have to fight today. Because when I start getting those negative thoughts in my head that tell me I'm a liar, that tell me I'm a terrible father, that tell me that I don't have a job, that tell me that I don't have friends, instead of pulling out an MP5, I can pull out my Bible and I can remember my training. And that's God called me saved and forgiven. And after that, it really doesn't matter what anybody else calls me, because that's all that matters.
Oh my God. I love that. It's funny because I talked to Randy Weinheimer yesterday, who's been on the show. He's coming out to the show again, coming up, and we may change the conversation now after this, but he says it to me all the time. He's like, you are fighting a war every single day you wake up. And he goes, and most people don't even realize it. He goes, you realize that you need to shield up. We need to get ready. And for me, it's that, it's like a bit of yoga for my body, to move the body. I do the journaling. I do a bit of meditation to go within myself. And that's me getting ready. I go to the gym. It's me, getting ready for the day. But you don't realize, like, you are at war with everybody that you're, someone cuts you off. It's like, hello, like you don't need to react, because again, you started your morning ready. Like, you're ready for battle, right? And how you react is the training, right? And I think you just, man, that was perfect. That was great. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Came on by and your vacation. What an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For everyone that's listening, please like, share, comment, subscribe, become a Substack member. Everything on the Substack is completely free. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next Wednesday.